Okay, I'm back here today. I've got my Auto World California cruising set here all set up and painted now. I wanted to do black originally, but the lacquer that I was using ended up making the track a little too slick for my tastes. That actually provided a pretty good base for this Rust-Oleum cement paint, and sprayed it on. It doesn't look as good in the video as it does in real life, but it looks pretty nice actually overall. Once the scenery's put in and everything, it'll kind of blend in a little bit better than now. Right now it kind of pops out a little too much. The thing with this paint is make sure you put it on really thin. If it builds up in spots, it'll stay shiny and tacky. And I got into a position here in these corners when I was trying to clean these rails off where it actually took the paint off. This center paint is built up a little bit higher than this outside edge. You can kind of see the shade difference with this lighting because I filled all my screw holes in and had extra layers of paint there to try to blend it a little bit better. So that was kind of a bad deal. I'll fix that here a little bit later. But for the moment, I'm starting to run cars on this. As long as the paint's thin, the cars are grabbing great, not a problem. We had some, right there. Kind of hear how rough that is. The spots where I did the filling for these screw holes with the lacquer paint that I was using, it showed a smooth spot here where all those little bumps on the surface of the track had been removed. And this textured cement paint actually went back in and filled that back in, so it looks like factory track. It looks like it's never been sanded. So that was a benefit of using that cement paint. It matched the track up really nice. Now, cleaning the rails off was a problem. I didn't have any real good options there. So I wanted to keep all this edge clear of paint because that's where I'm going to attach my scenery to as we go up here, up these curves and stuff. Down flat's not going to matter because that's going to be built up with wood and plastic. But right here is going to be foam and plaster right up in here, down in here. So that was important to keep that clean for adhesion purposes. Cleaning these rails off is a problem. If I had the time and the patience, I would go back and probably tape the rails off right here, paint this area. Tape off here and here, paint this area. And that way I wouldn't have to touch my rails hardly at all. Just a little bit of touch up where the paint would bleed through. But having to scrape these in all this surface is a problem because the track's bowed. If the track was perfectly flat, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But we have a little bow in the track, and it's just molding quality issues, I guess. So I can't use a chemical here. If I use a chemical cleaner, I'm going to ruin my paint, obviously. So options were fairly limited with what I could do. Probably the best thing was to use a penny. I've seen people saying nickels, but a copper penny, this one's a zinc one I was just playing with, but a copper penny going down like this right here will clean that paint off nice. And the copper's soft. These rails are real soft metal, so they're real easy to nick and chip, so we didn't want to do too much of that. So anything hard on these rails is bad. The trouble with using the penny, because it's round, it'll roll over into your paint, and that's how I got that mistake down there at the other end, was trying to do this, and I'd roll over here into the paint unintentionally. So this could easily be done. I would suggest tape this side of the rail, tape this side of the rail, and then go down here to save your paint. Because I'm doing this while it's kind of soft still. It hasn't cured out. It'll cure out in a few days, I guess. Moisture here is keeping it kind of wet, but it'll get harder the longer I wait. So Right now, what I'm doing is the way you shouldn't do it. And I'm basically taking this razor blade here and going across these tracks like this, scraping that paint off. The edge of the razor blade, as long as it's not nicked up, you can see the nicks there and that one right there, a little bit above my thumb. That will destroy these rails. That will put chips and nicks in these rails. So I'm changing out these razor blades literally about every section of track. I've got a box of 100 here that I'm trying to burn up because they're not good quality blades. And this has been really good, but I'll just sit there and scrape a little bit here. You have to kind of gauge underneath your blade before you start, because some points like this right here are just right at that rail level, and you'll scrape this section of paint off here in this little clip area. So something to watch for. But I'm just going along cleaning this off. I used packing tape here to cover this area here and here because I needed it thin. A regular tape was just going to be too thick, and this packing tape's real hard to see whenever you're putting it down. But once you get close up to that rail, if your blade is nicking into that tape, it'll scratch and peel up just a section of it, so you can watch and not damage your paint on each side of these rails. I couldn't do it all at once because, again, of the bow of the track, so I'm doing this side, and then I'm doing this side, and it's really tedious getting that stuff down just close to the rail as I can without getting on the rail. But even if I do get a little bit on the rail, I'll notice it. I'll hit that tape, and it'll actually scrape it on and off. Now I'll go over this with an eraser when I'm done to just clean off any extra that's left. If there happens to be any paint spots left, the cars will eventually take it off anyway. So yeah, just have to watch my shoes and make sure everything's fine there. But that's the situation I've been in here with this track. It's going to get pretty tedious right over here in the middle of this cross piece. So that's going to take a little extra work, but I'm starting to be able to run cars. I've got about half this track done on the long end of the loop. So once the cars hit that painted section of rail, they stop. So I mean, I know where I'm at. Hasn't been too big of an issue so far. It's just slow work. I don't really recommend painting the track if you don't have to. Of course, brilliant me decided to screw it down with the factory holes. I think next time if I do this, I'm going to come in here on the side like this because I've built a build up for scenery anyways, so I can notch this out of whatever I put in there. I think I want to secure on the sides. My guardrails, of course, it'll have guardrails. I did something a little bit different here. I clipped the bottom edge of those off and then screwed them in. The good news is you won't be able to see any attachment points once the scenery's in. The bad news is I'll have to dig the scenery out if I ever need to replace any of these. So that's not ideal, but I didn't want the track lifted up. See if I can grab one real quick. I didn't want the track lifted up off of this wood here. So basically what we did, hard to see, I just clipped off all the points that would be underneath that track. And then I ordered some very small little metric screws from Amazon, a little box of them. And I was able to drill holes and attach there. And it's hard to see. Just made up like that right there, going all around so I can maintain my my Auto World guardrails. I'd contemplated building my own guardrails, but the softness of this plastic and the car body slide over and hit it, I felt that was going to be a better option for the car paint over time. Plus, this is flexible. If I happen to whack it with my hand or something, it's not gonna break. So as long as I'm careful, I think we'll be fine here. It's just gonna, hopefully I won't ever have to replace one, but if I do, well, Cross that bridge when we get there. So that's it for the progress today. It's just a matter of getting all this thing cleaned up and back into operation. And then the next step, of course, will be deciding where I want my buildings. I have a few buildings so far. I'm just buying one building, putting the basic 4 walls together and setting it in place and seeing what I think of it. So it's not ideal, but it's what I've got. Let's see if I can scoot over here and grab one real quick. Of course not. This is going to be a disaster. There we go. So yeah, I'm just kind of taking the buildings. Never mind the diner on the top. Kind of setting them where I want them. And of course they'll be raised up. Kind of for a size difference, because I was telling you about how of course that slots off. The T-jets and the extractions had a different scale. I've got that taped so it's not going to set real well. There we go. There's some little HO people here. There we go. The building will raise up about 1/4 of an inch, so it will look better. But next to the people, you're still out of scale. But for my purposes, it's okay. But you can see, I mean, a DeLorean obviously is not at head level. Overall, it doesn't look too bad. S gauge is the correct scale, but you can't get anything for S scale hardly. And if you do, it's extremely expensive. So that's why I went with the HO stuff. And I've got a lot of HO train stuff anyways, as I've got rat hole back. But overall, in the end, I think it'll be okay. It's just a work in progress and trying to pick up ideas where I can. So that's it until I start this scenery.